Hey, Fly Tires, how you doing today? Who's here? Who's here? Who's watching today, and who's tying along? This is not a difficult fly we're tying today. It's a bigger fly, and none of the steps are terribly difficult. So I hope you tie along. We're tying Wildwood's 3M Minnow. And this is a fly I got intrigued with when I did a Facebook Live session with Kip Veith on warm water fishing a few weeks ago. And it's on. If you want to see that and see Kip talking about it, it's on the Orvis Facebook page. It's archived there and probably archived on YouTube as well. But it's a baitfish imitation. And full disclosure, I have never tied this fly. No, I shouldn't say I have not never tied this fly. I've never fished this fly, but I know it's going to fish really well. It looks really good. In fact, I am after tomorrow, I'm going to be gone on vacation for 2 weeks or 10 days, and I'm going to be fishing for striped bass, and I'm going to use this fly for striped bass because I think it'll be a killer fly on stripers. But it was originally, and Kip, I had hoped that Kip would be here to talk us through this fly today, like we've had other people before. But Kip's guiding today, and he may just pop in. He's on the water guiding, so Kip won't be able to join us, but hopefully he'll pop in and make a couple comments. But it is a baitfish imitation. Okay, so this fly, although it was developed for smallmouth bass and pike, this fly will catch anything that will eat baitfish. So this fly will work on largemouths. It'll work on stripers. It'll work on redfish. It'll work on tarpon. At times, but it's a good baitfish imitation, has nice action, has a nice profile to it, and has a lot of sparkle and a lot of wiggle. So it should work for nearly anything that will eat a baitfish. The other thing about it is I'm going to tie it in mostly all white because I like white baitfish flies. But this can be tied in any color or combination of colors that you want, all black or yellow or pink or a combination of colors. But again, I like white baitfish better, particularly for striped bass, which I'm going to be fishing for over the next 10 days. So and I'm sure this fly will catch trout as well. I'm going to tie it on a size 1, so it's a big fly, but this is not too big for a big brown trout. So anyway, that is the fly. And I don't think this would be a fly for carp topic, unless you have carp that are eating fairly large baitfish. This might work I know that some of our Great Lakes have carp that eat gobies, which is a baitfish, really large baitfish. But in most cases, it's probably not a great fly for carp, but it'll work for anything that'll eat baitfish. But it's a killer smallmouth bass fly, which is what Kip originally tied it for. And Kip ties it in a size 6 for smallmouth. I'm going to tie it in a size 1. Because I'm going to use these for probably stripers and pike, and I like to have a pattern that'll work for a number of things, and I'm sure that it'll work in saltwater, in southern saltwater for snook and redfish and tarpon. So I'm going to tie it a little bit bigger than Kip does. So anyway. Tam, if you're going to fish the New River in West Virginia, I would suggest that you talk to a fly shop in West Virginia or the nearest Orvis store and find out what works, because I've never fished it and I don't know what might be working there. So you're going to have to, I'm afraid you're going to have to get your advice from a local source. It's going to be much more reliable than what I can tell you, because I'm going to tell you a black woolly bugger for anything and it'll work, but that's not what you want to hear. So you'll have to always check local resources before you ask me, unless you're asking me about a place I've fished in the past couple of days. All right, so we have the pattern up there in the comments. Before I start, does anyone have any questions about this fly? And of course, I'll tell you the materials as I'm going. But anybody have any questions for me before we start, other than what to use on the New River in West Virginia? Ken, you're from West Virginia. Can you tell Tan Fam 5 what to use on the New River? Maybe you can help out. All right. So I don't see any questions at this point. I'll be at Casco Bay, Maine, fishing for stripers. Yeah, this should be a good fly, Mike. Yes, you can downsize it. You can size this down to Kip uses it in a size 6. You could tie this down to probably a size 8 or a 10. And Roger Bird, good point. Hey, Roger Bird, good point. Kip feels very strongly. You can. This is a streamer, it's a bait fish, so you can fish it any way you want, and you should experiment. But Kip has found that, and he's developed this fly for a strip and then a pause to let this fly has some wiggle and some flash to it. So it's like a bait fish trying to get away, and then a bait fish kind of having trouble and kind of pausing. It's a neutral buoyancy fly. And, a lot of flies, Clouser minnows, and a lot of the weighted streamer flies, bait fish flies we use, do this kind of dipping action. And that's fine, and that works lots of times. But there are some times when you want a neutrally buoyant fly that is a very slow sinking fly. It stays in one place in the water column. And for shallow water, or if you want to fish it shallow, you fish it on a floating intermediate line. And if you want this fly deeper, then you fish it on a sinking line. But it's going to stay at a level plane. And sometimes a fly that doesn't dip and bob and stays on a level plane can be more effective for fish. It's particularly effective for tarpon. I know tarpon don't like a fly that bobs and weaves. They like a fly that just kind of planes in one direction, kind of a neutrally buoyant fly. So anyway, general streaming question. Maybe it's not me, but I'm not seeing half of the comments that you're addressing on either Facebook or YouTube. Yeah, I don't know. There may be a delay, and you may be seeing them a little later, JJ. But I haven't had anyone else with that kind of problem before. You need knowledge to transfer online lessons on how to fly fishing. Okay. I don't see any of the comments. I see them all. I honestly don't know. Those of you who aren't seeing comments, are you on YouTube or on Facebook?
Julia? I can look into it and get back to you. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, Julia's back. Julia's back from vacation. I know you all missed her, so here she is. And she's looking so happy and refreshed after being away from social media and work for so long.
I'm happy to see all of you or hear from all of you, and I'll investigate what's going on with the comments.
Okay.
Okay.
Some people say they're seeing them.
Okay. I know that. So we're just for everyone's knowledge, we're broadcasting this on 4 different networks, and so we can see the comments come in from different ones. And so we might be responding to something that isn't visible to you because it's on a different channel.
4. No, 3. Orvis Facebook, UK Facebook, and YouTube. There's not 4.
Both Orvis Facebooks, the fly fishing and the regular, and UK.
Oh, okay.
So that might be why.
It might be why. Yep. Okay. All right. So I see lots of comments, but I don't see any questions. So I am going to I'm going to start. Let's tie. There's what the close up of what the fly is going to look like in the end. You can't see the whole thing, but I'll show you the whole thing a little bit later. And here's the materials. So I'm going to start with B10S stinger hook. You can use any big heavy hook that you want. I like this hook for larger flies. I find it to be good in for freshwater bass and pike and for saltwater. And again, I'm going to tie it in a size 1, which is bigger than Kip usually ties it. I'm sure he uses something like this for pike, but for smallmouth, he ties it in a size 6. I'm going to take this completed fly out of the vise and put in a nice fresh hook, level it off. Can't see from up here too well sometimes. Okay. So I'm going to use gel spun polyester for this fly. I don't typically like it, but this is a big fly, and I want to build up some bulk. So you could use any thread at all, but a white thread is what I'm going to tie with because this fly is all white. So I'm going to start my thread by crossing it over and trimming the end. And then I'm going to start with some red Flashabou. So I am going to take, maybe, I don't know, dozen strands or so. This is for just a little bit of a red accent. So I got about, somewhere around a dozen strands. I'm going to wet it, make it easier to work with. Once you wet it, they stay all nice and neat. And I'm going to cut a whole strand from this. And you can get probably 3 or 4 flies from this strand. And I am going to just take the whole strand and tie it in, and then I'll cut it about the length of the hook shank. So I'm going to come back to here where I started. I'm going to give my thread a little counterclockwise spin to make it jump back, and just kind of pull that Flashabou up and toward me so that it stays on top of the hook. And wind it back to the bend, right where the hook starts to go down to the bend. And then I'm going to cut it off. Let me change my camera angle here a little bit. I'm going to cut it off at about a hook shank length. Right about there. And then, of course, that's going to fluff up. Once that dries, it'll become a little bit more mobile and flashy. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to tie the bucktail tail. So I am going to grab a bunch of natural bucktail, white. And I like fairly coarse bucktail, so I might come down. The farther down you go on the tail, the coarser the bucktail is. I don't want the stuff way at the bottom, but I don't want the real fine stuff at the top. I want somewhere in the middle. And I'm going to grab myself a fairly good amount, probably 2 pencil widths of bucktail. Pretty good, substantial amount. Now, if you're tying a size 6, if you're tying these for smallmouths, probably 1 pencil width of bucktail is enough. And then I'm going to clean this by holding it at the tips and just pulling all the little fine hairs at the base out of there. Give it a couple flicks. That sometimes help dislodge some of this stuff. And then I like to then look at the tip, and if there's any super long fibers, I'll just pull them out so that we have a nice tapered bunch of bucktail. And I am going to make this. I think I'll use the other camera for this because I've got a pretty wide deal here. I'm going to make this tail 2 to 2.5 times the length of the shank. That's a long tail, but you want a long tail on this. So I'm going to go like I want it to be about that long as compared to the hook. So pretty long. Longer than probably a normal streamer. And I'm going to trim it to about a couple eye lengths back. So I'm just going to cut this off. And then I'm going to tie it in by rolling the thread over the top, pinching it and holding my index finger on the far side to keep it from rolling over. And then I'm just going to go forward with fairly even turns. You need to really secure bucktail. It can pull out. You've got to really bind that bucktail down. You don't need to put any cement on it if you wrap it properly, but you should be able to really yank on that tail and not pull anything out. So there's my underbody and my nice long tail. And then I'm going to go back to the other camera. There's a little close-up of the tail attachment point. And now Kip does something that I really like. He takes some white EP fiber and he puts a bunch on either side of the tail, and this helps brace the tail in place, and it also gives that fly a broader profile and a little bit nicer of a taper. So I'm going to grab, let's say, a pencil width of white EP fiber. And I want this to be on either side of that white bucktail, and I want it to be tapered, and I want it to be the same length as the red Flashabou. So I'm gonna measure this and get 2 lengths of it, and then cut it. And then I'm going to taper this this EP fiber. And to taper it, you just hold it loosely and kind of just tease it a little bit on either end. Roll it a little bit and tease it. So you get, you know, it's not cut off straight. It's got a taper. It's going to have a taper to either end. And then I'm going to find the midpoint of this EP fiber. Just eyeball it. And I'm gonna, oops, forgot to do something. Forgot to come back. Sorry, come back to the tail. And take that midpoint and tie it on the far side of the bucktail against the side of the shank. So I'm holding it there at the side. Here, I'll turn this so you can see. So it's on the side. And then I'm going to wrap forward a couple turns. And then I'm going to take this other piece and fold it down against the near side. So that I've got, and then I'm going to wrap back over that. Bind it down so that I've got some bucktail or some EP fiber on either side of that bucktail. Okay. And next, I'm going to make it even flashier. I'm going to take some silver Flashabou. And I'm going to grab a bunch that's equal in diameter to that bucktail that I tied on. So quite a bit of Flashabou. And I'm going to wet this and cut it. Make it easier to work with. Now it's a nice uniform bunch. And this will give you, this one bunch will give you enough for a couple of flies. And I am going to tie it in all the way up to the front. So I got it laid down there. And this is going to go on top of the hook. So just wrap that forward. You can wet it again if you want to hold it in place. You don't have to be too neat with this. And then come back. And then I'm going to cut it so that it's about the same length as the bucktail. So just come in and snip it. Hold that other piece aside for another fly. So now we've got a lot of stuff going on there. A lot of action, a lot of wiggle, a lot of flash. Then I'm going to take some sort of flashy tinsel brush. I'm using mirror wrap, which I like on this size. You could also use a EP sparkle brush in whatever color you wanted, or on a smaller fly, you could even use some ice chenille. for a real small fly, like a 6 or an 8. But this mirror wrap is a long strand with flashy tinsel on it. And I'm going to cut a fairly long piece, maybe, I don't know, 7 inches. You need quite a bit of this. So I got a nice long piece of mirror wrap. And I'm going to tie the mirror wrap in. There's a cord down the center of it, so I'm just going to tie that in nice and tightly. And make sure that that's bound down really well. Any questions so far, Julia? No questions? You're muted, Julia. You're muted.
I had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I don't see. So I was gone. My computer shut down. But I don't see any. No, you didn't even know. Drew came into the rescue for a little bit.
Okay.
No, I don't see any questions in here since I was out of commission. So I think you're okay. And Edward was asking for the recipe. It's at the very top of the comments. I posted it at the top of the hour, but I'm happy to repost too if you can't find it. Thanks.
Now I'm going to take a piece of white chenille. This just adds a little bit of a bulk to the body. And I'm using a woolly bugger chenille that has a little sparkle to it, but you could use any white chenille or any color chenille you wanted to, really. But you could even, if you wanted to work really hard, you could dub a body, but the chenille makes it quite easy to work with. And I'm just gonna use my fingernails to expose those threads at the base of the chenille. And I'm going to tie that chenille in the same way I did the mirror wrap, making sure you go all the way back to that tail. And don't worry about bulk here, because you'll want bulk on the body of this fly. Then I'm going to bring my thread forward to about 1 eye length, right where I ended the body. And now I'm just going to wrap the chenille in overlapping turns, or not overlapping, but just touching turns. And this will almost disappear when you're finishing off the fly. And tie it off, not too close to the eye. Leave yourself some room there, because you want to build up a nice head here. And you got to tie off that mirror flash too. And then once you tie that off, start forming a little head, secure that chenille really well, and wrap back on it a little bit. It'll make it nice and secure. If you got any squigglies in front of the eye, clean them off now. And now we're going to wrap the mirror flash, which is sometimes a little tricky, but it's not bad. You want to wrap it so that it folds back toward the tail of the fly, toward the bucktail and the rest of it. So you can see it's starting fine for me, but this stuff tends to twist as you wind it. So just kind of twist it and turn it and fold it back with your fingers in fairly close turns. You want to cover this whole body with this flashy stuff. It gets harder it gets twistier as you've been winding. So you just have to work it and stroke it back and twist it a little bit. But you can see why I started with such a long piece of mirror wrap, because And if you bind a few under, no big deal. You can just fold it on the next turn to keep them in the right direction.
Tom, Ed's asking if this is a good fly for snook.
I would imagine it is, because white baitfish imitations are killer for snook. So I would imagine it would be a good fly. I don't know of anybody that's caught snook on it, but I wouldn't hesitate to fish this fly for snook. I think it would be a killer snook fly. Yeah. And you can see now I'm getting to the front there, and it's kind of getting squirrely on me, but I can stroke it back and try to get most of those fibers to go in place. Now I'm going to tie this off. And clip it. I'm going to take a look at it. And if there's some fibers that are in the way or it's sticking the wrong way, just trim them off. I'll come in here and get rid of these guys, because it should kind of all fold back. And then you're going to want to wind a nice head, covering up all that stuff. And you can build up a pretty good head on this. That's why I'm using a fairly heavy thread. And again, gonna get rid of some of these little doodads here that are getting in the way. And form a nice, neat, tapered head. That looks pretty good. Looks like the way I want it to look. I'll show you the full view of it here at this point. So that's what it looks like at this point. Focus that a little bit better. There. That's what it looks like at this point. And now, still got some wild strands here that I'm going to get rid of. Kind of smooth it out. And now, now you want to finish, well, you want to whip finish next. You're almost done, except for putting the eyes on. So I'm going to come forward, couple turns, and then I'm going to do a 5-turn whip finish, working toward the back. And trim that. And now you want to seal off that head. So you, at this point, you can use the cement of your choice. I'm going to use, I like this for streamers and stuff. I like this little applicator jar. Here, I'll show it to you in a wider view. I like this little applicator jar. Comes with head cement, and it has a little plug that comes out of it. And then you can just coat that head. This will dry pretty quickly. Head cement dries quickly. Get a good coat on there. A lot of the fish you use this for are going to be toothy. So you want to make sure that you got a nice durable head, and you could use UV epoxy at this point. You could use super glue too. It doesn't look as good. It's kind of a super glue when you put it on a head turns kind of a pasty white, and I just don't like the looks of it. And I see something I don't like.
Once you're done with that, Tom, we do have a couple questions.
Yeah, because I want to let this dry anyways, so it's a good time for questions. I'm just going to come in and
trim it up.
Yeah, trim it up, and then I'm actually before the head cement's completely dry, I'm going to squeeze the sides of this. Okay, so time for questions. So I'm going to let that dry for a second.
Bill's asking what the overall length is once you're done. The fly.
On this one? Good question. This is going to be 3 inches long. For smallmouth, you probably want 1.5 to 2. But as I said before, I'm tying this for striped bass, and I wanted a bigger fly. I'm tying this to use for striped bass offshore in the rips, where they go for bigger flies, and you want a big attention grabbing fly. So this is a large one. Or for pike, you want it to be 3-4 inches long. But for smallmouth, a smallmouth will eat a fly this size too. But I think that you're going to be better off with a 2-inch fly for smallmouth.
And then the other question, Mark was asking if you've ever hidden a bead under or used lead wire.
Well, I've never fished this fly before, Mark, but I would not, because as I said in the outset, this is a neutrally buoyant fly, and you want this thing to kind of hover in the water when you stop stripping. You don't want it to dart and dive. So you could, but it's kind of defeating the purpose of this fly, which is to have a neutrally buoyant fly. And Keith, we've already listed the pattern description twice in the comments, so just scroll up and you will find the pattern description. Any other questions that I missed, Julia?
No, I don't think so. There was a question about if this would work in a specific kind of like dark pond but I figured it was too specific. So would this work well in dark colored ponds in coastal South Carolina?
It might. In general rule is to use a darker fly in dark water, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't work. A white fly could work in dark water too, but you could just as easily tie this in black or olive or a darker color. Wouldn't be my first choice in dark water, but if a black fly didn't work, the next fly I would try is white. So you don't know.
And Warren just asked, do you fish it with sinking or floating line?
You fish it with either, Warren, depending on how deep you want to get it. The fish are in shallow, and this thing is gonna hover. So if you're fishing it shallow, or the fish are taking toward the surface, then you fish on a floating line. If the fish are deeper, say deeper than maybe 4 or 5 feet, then I would fish it on a sinking line. But again, it's going to hover, but it'll hover deeper if you fish it with a sinking line, because you're going to be pulling it through the water in a deeper level of the water column. Yep. So you could fish it either way, and I'm sure that Kip fishes it both with sinking lines and floating lines. Are there other sparkle colors you would use? Oh, really good question, Mike. Because when Kip ties this fly, the original I think was called a Goldie, and he would take a Pantone or a waterproof marker and color the whole top of this kind of a golden yellow. So if you look at the fly, he would take a marker and he would mark this whole top part, this part here, the head part. with a marker to give it a yellow head on top. So you could do that as well. Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to put the eyes on now.
Did you see the question about the colors, sparkle colors, smallmouth or striped bass?
Yeah, I think you should experiment. I've had I really like white flies for striped bass, but I also like white and olive. So you might want to do a white olive combo. But sometimes pink works, sometimes orange works. Any given day, I can't tell you what the fish are going to prefer, and I don't know. Even if I was out yesterday, I couldn't tell you what color is going to be good today for anything. You just got. Fishing, fly fishing, especially fishing with streamers, it's a lot of trial and error, and that's kind of the fun of it, is that we don't know what's going to work at any given time. We have to play around it. We have to experiment. So, if I were to tie this, I'd probably I'd tie some in all white. I'd tie some with white and olive on top. I'd tie some with white and yellow on top, and then I'd tie some all black, and I'd have all of those available. But my go-to flies for baitfish is typically white. Ed, if I fish this for snook, I would try everything. Again, start out with the standard strip, pause, strip, pause, strip, pause. If that doesn't interest the snook, then try a really steady strip. If that doesn't work, try a slow draw. If that doesn't work, try a kind of a jerky, short jerks. You've got to experiment. You have to. I can't tell you how to fish any of these flies. The fish are going to tell you how to fish them, not me. You got to experiment. Copper wrap would be wonderful, Ken. I think that it's a great idea. Okay, so we're going to put the eyes on now. And I am using 7 for this fly, this particular one. I am using 7mm fish skull living eyes in the ice color. But you could put any eyes on it you want. Just need some fairly large, although you might even try small eyes. And I'm going to stick them on with liquid fusion, which I really like for tying on eyes. It seems to really hold eyes, and they last. They last through numerous fish, and the eyes will stay on through a lot of casting. Another product that you might try is goop or marine goop. Head cement won't hold them on very well, and you don't want to use UV epoxy putting eyes on, because you cannot get the UV light behind the eyes, and it's going to stay liquid for a long time. No matter how much light, UV light you put on there, you're not going to be able to cure that epoxy underneath the eyes. So I'm going to turn this guy sideways. And the first thing I'm going to do is to trim both sides a little bit in here to flatten it out. I'm just going to clip those fibers because I want a flat spot to put my eye on. And I'm going to take your eyes out first. So I'm going to get a couple eyes ready. And take your goop or whatever you decide to put the eyes on with, and give yourself a nice good dollop of goop right behind the head, kind of overlapping the head. Be generous with the goop. or the liquid fusion or whatever you're using. And then press that eye onto the goop. And got a strand stuck in there. And then turn it over. And do the same thing on the other side. Trim some of those pieces away from there. Flatten it out. So you've got a nice little bed to place your eye. And give yourself another good drop of goop or liquid fusion or whatever you decide to use. I don't even think super glue works that well here. The eyes don't seem to stay on. This stuff is slightly flexible and just seems to really hold those eyes on there. And then look at it from the top, line them up. Squeeze them. And there you have it. Don't fuss with the eyes for too long. And this stuff does take an hour or so to dry. So you got a little time to reposition those eyes to make sure they're symmetrical. Not that the fish care, but you do. And there you go. There's the Wildwood 3M minnow. Now, you could also trim this flash. If you could come in and trim this if you felt it was too long. I kind of like it. I think when Kip ties this, he doesn't use his flash is about this long, but I kind of like the longer look. But you could take a pair of longer blade scissors. They make it easier to trim, and you could come in and trim this if you wanted to. I'm going to leave mine long. Well, let's take a look at it with the wider camera so you can see the whole fly a little bit better. So there's the whole fly, and as I said, it really looks like a killer fly. I haven't used it yet. I plan on it very soon, like starting tomorrow. But if you're fishing for any kind of game fish that eat bait fish, I think this is a great bait fish imitation. All right. Any more questions?
We had one question. Have you ever tied it small for trout?
Nope, I haven't, but you could. I would, for the body, if I was going to tie it small for trout, I would definitely use ice chenille and not this mirror wrap, because a mirror wrap is way too long for a trout fly. Or EP sparkle fiber, EP sparkle brush. Sorry, in a 1 inch. He sells a 1 inch variety of sparkle brush. I would, if I was going to tie a trout fly, I would use the sparkle brush or the ice chenille for that. Yep.
And the flyer tier's asking, would Zap work well for setting the eyes?
No, not really. I've tried it. It doesn't hold them that well. These more viscous, semi-flexible things like goop and liquid fusion seem to work better. You can try it, but I have a feeling your eyes are going to fall off after a fish or two, or after a lot of casts. This stuff just seems to really hold those eyes to the fly better. But you can try Zap-A-Gap. That's just a thicker super glue though. Try it and see what happens. Just don't use UV cure epoxy because it's not going to work. That for sure isn't going to work.
Warren's asking if you could use it for any other saltwater fish.
Yes, as I said at the beginning, you can use this on any fish that's going to eat a bait fish. So bluefish, trevally, barracuda would eat this in a heartbeat. Yeah, anything. This is a bait fish imitation. It's a generic, wide profile bait fish imitation. So it will work. It will probably work for anything like that. Yep, it's like a lefty's deceiver or a woolly bugger. You know, it's like you can use them for anything. Clouser minnow, use it in the same situation you would use those, except it gives you a different action in the water and a different swimming motion and a different action, which sometimes can turn the trick for you. Any other questions? It's a good looking fly, and I like it. I enjoy tying them. They're not that hard to tie, and I think it's going to work really well. Cactus chenille would work. Yep, in the smaller sizes. All right. If we don't have any more questions, we will not have a tying session next Monday. I will be on vacation. Yes, Mark, I will use it in the surf on an intermediate line. I've grown my hair like yours, but I'm still not catching any more trout. Any suggestions? Well, Travis, my trout fishing hasn't been that great either, so maybe we should both cut our hair. Maybe it would bring us some good luck. Mark, maybe a hot glue gun would work. I don't know if that glue is strong enough, but again, you can try it. I've never tried a hot glue gun for putting on ice, but it's worth a try. We're not going to have a tying session next Monday because I'm on vacation. But in 2 weeks, we're going to be tying the split case PMD nymph, which is a really, really popular fly in the Western United States. Also works really well in the Eastern United States because we have a lot of flies that look the same as a PMD. PMD is pale morning dun, which is a mayfly species, but it's a size 14, 16, 18 mayfly. It's very, very common in most parts of the world. And the split case has a cool little yellow split poking through the wing case, which I think makes it a trigger to the fish. So anyway, we're going to tie that in 2 weeks. And then in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks, because I think we have the next Monday off for a holiday. In 4 weeks, we're going to have the tie-off where I'm going to lose to Tim Flagler again. And we haven't decided the fly yet. It's my choice, and I'm trying to think of a fly that I can beat Flagler at, but I don't think there is such a fly. So I'm gonna have to punt. Anyway, thank you everyone for your great questions. Tie some of these up, play around them. Let us know on Instagram or Facebook how they work for you. Send us a picture. And send us a picture of your fly. We'd love to see it. And I will see you all in 2 weeks. So enjoy your beginning of summer or late spring and get out there and do some fishing and try some of these flies out. Thanks, everybody.